Proverbs 3:23 through 24. Then you will walk on your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. You will lie down, and your sleep will be sweet. When we come to the Lord, He is our rest. Makes things easy, and we have a peace that we don't when we're in following after the things of this world. That doesn't mean things will be easy, but it means we have someone to trust and rely on. Okay, John 10:1 through 13. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter into the sheepfold by the door, but going up by another way, that one is a thief and a robber. There's people who claim they have access to heaven, have a way, have answers. False religions developed by the idea of man making a way to God. The truth is, God made a way for man to get to God, and that was Jesus coming. Every one of these thieves and robbers that he's talking here, their goal was to get man to God. But for man to come to God, God had to become man and die. And Jesus is the only way. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. This is Jesus. He's the shepherd of the sheep. The sheep are representative as those that follow him, his flock, the believers, those of the faith. The doorkeeper opens to him. This is the Spirit. The Spirit brings us to the truth. And the sheep hear his voice. His voice is the Word. He is God. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. God draws us to salvation. Now, not everyone he draws is going to accept. But those that are his sheep will accept because they're his sheep. He will always call out to people, but they may not be his sheep. The world's full of people who are going to reject God's calling in their life and never come to him. That doesn't mean he doesn't put forth the effort for them to come to faith. And when he puts forth his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. So those that are truly of the faith are going to try to do what he says. They ain't going to live. They got a purpose. They got someone they're following. We follow Jesus. We have a general idea of what he wants us to do. Doesn't mean we won't lose direction from the shepherd. And we need to take the example of the sheep to heart. The sheep oftentimes loses direction. But the shepherd comes back and gets that sheep and takes it. When God comes back to redirect us, we need to listen and not fall in a backslidden state. And they will not follow a stranger, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of the stranger. Those that are truly followers of Jesus will need to study the Word. Because if they know the Word, the voice of God, what the truth of the shepherd is, what the truth of Jesus is, they're not going to follow these false teachers and get up caught in that. Too many times what happens is these false teachers don't start off with false teaching. They add a little bit, and add a little bit, and add a little bit, and the true believers get caught up in it. And by the time they realize, it's too late for them to move out. But a true believer isn't going to openly follow a lie. So if they start off just predicting the wrong things, predicting untruths, spreading lies, a true believer will not follow them. Yeah, Jesus spoke this parable to them, but they did not understand what it was which he spoke to them. This is the Pharisees, and they ask him a question, and he responds with this. So he's talking to the Pharisees who came up to him after the healing of the blind man, confronted him. And the Pharisees were very educated people. They always focused on the physical things instead of the spiritual, therefore they did not understand half of and most of what Jesus was saying. Because some of the things that are deep value, they understood Jesus was talking about them. In fact, here, some of the strangers and thieves and robbers, he's pointing out people like the Pharisees, who choose to follow their own path rather than follow the shepherd Jesus. They chose to do their own thing. And the Pharisees were the strangers. They wanted people to follow them down their own path. But when it came to the road of destruction, they just left the people. All who came before me are the thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. Now, I don't think Jesus is referring to the prophets as thieves and robbers, because that's a negative thing. Jesus would never refer to them that. The Pharisees would have loved to accept him referring to that, but they don't get outraged. Therefore, he wasn't referring to them. He was referring to the people of the world that came before him. There's people before Jesus that claimed to be something, got a huge following, and let the people down. There was kings that had their following, but did not follow Jesus. Did not follow the Lord, I should say. Because, I am the door. If anyone enter in by me, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pasture. Now, Jesus is the only road that leads to heaven. He's the only gate that leads to heaven. He's the only door we can get through to get to heaven. Many people reject this today. The fact is, I stand by the truth, and they reject it. That's their freedom. God gave them free will to reject it. But one day they will know the truth as I do now. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. They come for their own profit. They come to boast to themselves, bring praise to themselves, and it ends up bringing negative things. They take what is not theirs from others. They end up killing people and just causing destruction because they come first. There's people in the world today that could care less of others as long as they're doing well. There's leaders, I should say, doing that as well. The fact is, we as believers should live differently. We should love one another and be concerned about others' well-being. Now, that does not mean that we are to be doormats for them to walk on. Jesus wasn't a doormat, and he's the best example of that. But Jesus did help those who wanted help. There's those out there that don't want help either, and I don't think we should bother. And Jesus oftentimes didn't bother helping people who wouldn't help themselves first. So, I've come so that you might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Jesus came to set a way. The way was him, by faith. We are saved, and our life is genuinely better after we come to Christ. Now, people will not see the difference and see why until they come to Christ. And once they come to Christ, they look back and it's more like, boy, How did I live without him to begin with? But until you see that need for Christ, which is him calling, you don't know how much you truly need him. But when you come to him, you realize, I needed him the whole time. Jesus will bring a way for us to go to heaven. Okay. There's nothing more abundant than a life with the Father. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. Jesus laid down on the cross. Jesus doesn't have to come back and lay down again and again. He did it once, and that's it. People say, well, God needs to prove himself to me. No, he don't. God's God. Whether you accept him, he's God. He doesn't have to prove himself to anything. Your faith in him doesn't change the fact that he's God. Now, he prefers you having faith in him, but he's still God whether you believe or not. And Jesus laid down his life whether you accept it or not. But he who is a hireling and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees a wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away. The wolf catches him and scatters the sheep. There's people who claim to come in the name of Christ who end up just causing chaos among the church. They usually invoke movements that are not God-led. Movements that allow certain things into the church that don't need to be, and they often cause division because of them coming in. The hireling flees because he is a hireling and does not care of the sheep. So the hireling, now this isn't referring to people who are getting paid as pastors. The Bible talks about that later. This is referring to people who are just doing the job, but are not led by the shepherd to do the job. This is talking about people who are getting paid, but not led to God to be in that position. There are those out there who are in positions of leadership in churches who are not led by God to do it, yet they step up anyway. This oftentimes takes away a position from who God wants to do that position. And it's sad, really. Because it has a ripple effect that affects the church. The church would be stronger if the people who God called would just step up. If somebody has a calling, it should be more irrelevant than somebody just being available to do something. But in today's time, people are so desperate to do things. They oftentimes don't wait for God's plan to happen.